What's going on, guys? We're so back. Just kidding. It's so over. Today, we're going to be talking about French Catholicism, the whole story. French Catholicism is one of the most influential religious traditions in world history. If Catholicism was a movie franchise, France would be one of its biggest producers, spin off creators, and occasionally its most difficult actor to work with, like, like Tom Cruise. France has been called the eldest daughter of the church, yet it also gave birth to some of the most anti clerical movements in European history. The French have spent nearly 1,500 years alternating between the church as the foundation of civilization, the church owns how much land, and the church is the foundation of civilization again, and then finally off with their heads. Let's get into the entire story. So, part one, before Christianity. Before Christianity arrived, the territory called France was inhabited by Celtic tribes, excuse me, known as the Gauls. The Gauls worshipped forest spirits, river gods, nature deities, and various mysterious beings overseen by druids. Then Julius Caesar arrived in 58 before Christ and essentially said, "Nice religion. It'd be a shame if someone conquered it." So the Romans gradually integrated Gaul into the empire. With Roman rule came Latin language, Roman law, Roman cities, and Christianity. At first, Christianity was tiny, then Rome began converting, and suddenly Gaul found itself to become Christian. Next is the baptism of Clovis, the big beginning. The true birth of French Catholicism comes from Clovis I, king of the Franks. Around 496 after death, Clovis converted to Catholic Christianity. This is huge. Why? Most Germanic kingdoms after Rome fell had become Arian kingdoms. Arianism taught Christ was subordinate to God the Father. I like this. I like this Arianism religion. This immediately made him popular with Gallo-Roman Catholics, friendly with bishops, and politically legitimate. According to tradition, during his baptism at Reims, a dove descended from heaven carrying holy oil. Whether this happened or not, French kings spent the next 1,000 years saying, "See, God likes us." Next is the Merovingians. The Merovingian kings ruled the Franks. Catholic bishops became enormously important. Monasteries spread. Churches multiplied. Saints became local celebrities. The average medieval Frenchman often knew more saints than kings. And some saints developed cult followings, rivaling many modern sport fandoms, like the Chiefs or the Raiders. Next is Charlemagne, the superstar. So Charlemagne, from 742 to 814, if medieval Europe had action figures, Charlemagne would sell millions. He expanded Christian territory, supported monasteries, promoted education, and protected the papacy. In 800 after death, Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans. This symbolized the alliance between the French and German rulers and the Catholic Church. For centuries afterwards, rulers would try to imitate him, but nobody would ever be capable of succeeding. Next is the Great Medieval Church. Between 1000 and 1300, France became arguably the center of Catholic Europe. This period produced massive cathedrals, universities, monastic movements, saints, theological worship, and France was Catholicism's cultural powerhouse. The cathedral boom. So imagine every town competing to build the tallest skyscraper. Now replace skyscrapers with cathedrals. Now that's medieval France. For some examples, we have the Notre Dame de Paris, Chartres, Reims, Amiens, and Bourges. These buildings were engineering miracles. Some took generations to complete. A mason could start working on a cathedral and die before seeing it finished. Talk about long-term planning. Next is the Crusades. So, France became deeply involved into the Crusades to the point where even the Saracens, the Muslims were referring to the Crusaders just as Franks. Many major Crusader leaders were French. When Pope Urban II called the First Crusade in 1095, he did so at Clermont, the Council of Clermont, in France. French knights basically heard adventure, salvation, swords, and responded with say less. The First Crusade ended with the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. French nobles dominated many of these new Crusader states. Saints everywhere. So France produced some of Catholicism's most famous saints. First of these being Saint Louis IX, the ideal Christian king. He was personally pious, charitable, and led the Crusades. He became the only French king to be canonized. Next is Bernard of Clairvaux, Clairvaux, one of the most influential churchmen who have ever lived. He promoted monastic reform, mysticism, and he was a big supporter of the Knights Templar. Medieval Europe basically treated Bernard like a celebrity intellectual, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, per se. Joan of Arc, so perhaps the most famous French Catholic, a peasant girl who claimed divine visions. She helped reverse the 100 Years' War. She was tried for heresy, executed, declared innocent, and then canonized. Quite the career arc. These jokes are we're so back. Next, the French and the Pope start arguing, so no relationship lasts forever. Eventually, French kings begin asking, why should the Pope tell us what to do? Thus emerged Gallicanism. Gallicanism argued that the French church should have special independence, kings should exercise authority over church affairs, and the Pope disliked this. French monarchs liked it very much, and this tension would continue on for centuries. The Avignon Papacy, one of the strangest periods in church history. From 1309 to 1377, the popes lived in Avignon, France. Critics joke the papacy had become a French puppet. Some Italians called it the Babylonian captivity of the church. Imagine moving the Vatican to Kansas for 70 years. That's how strange it is. Now, moving on, we have the Reformation. So the Reformation hits France, 1500s, brought Protestantism. The French Protestants became known as the Huguenots. The country became divided, Catholics versus Protestants. Things got ugly. Mad ugly. The St. Bartholomew Days Massacre, 1572. Thousands of Protestants were killed, religious violence exploded, and France seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Then came Henry IV. Originally Protestant, famously converted to Catholicism, supposedly saying Paris is worth a mass. Whether he actually said it, it remains debated, but it perfectly captures French pragmatism. The Catholic monarchy. During the 1600s, France became a dominant Catholic kingdom under Louis VIII, Cardinal Richelieu, and Louis XIV. Catholicism became intertwined with royal power. Louis XIV promoted religious uniformity. The Sun King essentially viewed himself as God's regional manager. Jansenists versus Jesuits. So French Catholicism developed intense theological debates. One major controversy involved the Jansenists, emphasized sin, grace, and human weakness. Think about spiritual pessimists. And the Jesuits emphasized education, missionary work, and flexibility. Think spiritual strategists. The arguments became so fierce that outsiders sometimes wondered if Catholics disliked other Catholics more than Protestants. Next, the French Revolution. Everything changed in 1789. The revolution erupted. Many revolutionaries viewed the church as a corrupt, wealthy, privileged institution that was allied with the monarchy. So the church ended up losing lands. Monasteries were closed. Priests were persecuted. Religious symbols were destroyed. And some radicals even tried replacing Christianity entirely. What blasphemy. They introduced new calendars, new festivals, and the cult of reason. Nothing says revolutionary confidence like trying to redesign time itself. Moving on, we have Napoleon. So Napoleon understood the usefulness of the institution of religion. So in 1801, he negotiated with the Pope. Catholicism returned, but under state supervision. Napoleon's attitude was roughly religion is important as long as I am in charge. The 19th century revival. So many expected French Catholicism to disappear, to just vanish. However, this period saw new religious orders, missionary activity, and pilgrimage. So one of the biggest events occurred at Lourdes in 1858. A girl named Bernadette Subaru reported Marian visions. Lourdes became one of the world's most important pilgrimage sites. Millions still visit to this day. Now, the Church versus Republic. So the Third Republic of France embraced secularism. Tensions began to explode again. The climax came about in 1905 when France formally separated church and state. This remains one of the most defining moments in modern French history. The principle became known as laicite. In English, this is French secularism. Today, the French state is officially neutral regarding religion. Now, French Catholicism today, modern France is far less religious rather than medieval France, obviously. Church attendance has declined dramatically, heartbreaking, and yet Catholicism remains deeply woven within French culture. It often appears everywhere. Its influence is in architecture, holidays, art, literature, politics, and language. Even many secular French people live among Catholic traditions they barely even pick up on. Now, the great French Catholic legacy. So French Catholicism gave the world theology, Bernard of Clairvaux, Bossuet, de Lubac, Congar, and saints such as Joan of Arc, Louis IX, Bernadette, Therese of Lisieux, and Vincent de Paul. Architecture, we have Notre Dame, Chartres, Amiens, and Reims. For literature, we have Pascal, Claudel, Francois Mauriac. Spirituality, we have the Carmelite traditions, Marian devotion, and pilgrimage culture. The main paradox, the central paradox here. So the story of French Catholicism is just giant contradiction. France helped build medieval Christendom. France hosted the Crusades, saints, monasteries, and cathedrals. France also produced Voltaire, the French Revolution, militant secularism, and some of the most fiercest critics of the Catholic Church. So for 15 years, France has been simultaneously one of Catholicism's greatest champions and one of Catholicism's harshest critics. That tension is why French Catholic history is so fascinating. In a sense, the history of French Catholicism is the history of France itself. Brilliant, dramatic, intellectual, occasionally, more than often, chaotic, and always convinced it has something more important to say about civilization.